Okay, last time in the 3D section of these tutorials we looked at the very basics of moving the view around. This time we're going to be looking at the user coordinate system and how it interacts with some commands. First command it's going to interact with is cylinder. Okay, I'll turn that back on. So when we're describing a cylinder, I've got a bit of a framework here to put a cylinder in. The command is cyl. A cylinder is always drawn, the circular face of a cylinder at least, is always drawn on the XY plane, and the height of a cylinder goes along the Z axis. So this first cylinder is no worries. We can click, 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 and fill that cylinder in there nicely. No problem. Alright, next up. This time, if we want to draw a cylinder, say on the side of this box, well, that's a bit trickier. We have to move the XY plane, which is something we haven't yet done. But of course there's a way to do that in AutoCAD, and that's with the command UCS, which stands for User Coordinate System. So following the prompts, where's our new origin? With a bit of practice you get a feel for where to put these origins, and I've got some hints here to label where you can click in order to define your new UCS. So I'm going to click here for one. There's a second point, so this is now a point on our x-axis. We want our new x-axis to be here, and a point on the xy plane will come up here. So once we've defined the x and the y plane, or the x-axis and a point on the xy plane, the z-axis is automatically defined. A simple rule is just that all of these axes are perpendicular. So once the x-axis length is defined, the rest of it doesn't require as in-depth commands. But with the UCS moved, we can type cylinder again, and you'll see that now a cylinder is being described in a different means than it was before. So we've now got a cylinder like that. Now if I want to come back over to, say, this view here, and if I want to go to my top, well, you can see it's not top anymore, it's back. Where is top? Top's over here. If I click top, well, that doesn't really help me at all. What I need to do is I need to move the user coordinate system back to where it was before. If I type UCS and hit W for world, or UCS and P for previous, it will move back to its original position, and provided I can get back to where I was without AutoCAD stressing out too badly, I'm now able to see top again and straighten up the view. So that's just saying that when we're after making a UCS change, I often find it's best to go back to the old UCS once you're finished using that particular coordinate system. That way you can go back to being viewing from a southwest isometric position, or whatever you prefer to do. We used array command in the miscellaneous drawing tutorial. You can also use array with 3D objects, and it was implied but not actually explained in the past that array is always around the XY axis. XY plane. So if I change my UCS, if I want to array these cones around this inclined object, I must first move my UCS, which is easy enough to do. So I can click these points, and now my grid spacing, you can see I'm aligned with that top edge. When I type AR for array, I want a polar array, I want to center around. I can mouse over the edges of these cylinders to find its circle snap points. And what am I doing? 18 objects through 360 degrees. Number of items is 18, and we've got 360 degrees. I'll return the UCS to its world position, and there we have it. Nice spiky, I don't know, whatever that's supposed to be. Okay, wedge. So it took me a long time to figure out the right way to draw a wedge, actually. It seems a bit tricky because when you type WE for wedge, and you kind of think, oh, okay, I want it to pop up in a certain direction. You might not have a framework to go on as such, but you want it to pop up in a certain direction, and it keeps not doing what you expect it to. The trick is that the first click you make is always where the high part of the wedge comes in, and the wedge always points, if you think about this triangle as pointing in a direction, it always points along the x-axis. So if I click over here, this is the high side of the wedge. I click over there and I want my wedge to be along the x-axis. I can define my height. But if I want to put a wedge in a different direction, well, I'm going to have to move the UCS. So this time I can say UCS, I'll say here. Another thing you can do when you're moving the UCS, if you hold down Shift, you can move in the orthogonal tracking. Oh no, it's ortho on by default. Okay, so if ortho isn't on, say you were on polar tracking, I didn't realize ortho was already set on. If you're on polar tracking, you can hold down Shift and move out to these different orthogonal settings. So this time I want my points of the wedge to be along the x-axis, so that's in this direction, and my y-axis can be anywhere, doesn't really matter. Define z later. Now when I put a wedge, remember the first place I want to click is where the high side of the wedge is, then I've got my opposite corner, and finally the height of the wedge. Moving around to this side, high side of the wedge, low side or thin side, and height. Too easy. Again, I can move the UCS back to world. Okay, what else do we have? So this last panel is, there's no real examples of how to use these commands, but you can draw a torus with torus. Torus looks like this. You can draw a cone. You can draw a pyramid. I think you can only do square base. Specify base radius or inscribed. Oh no, you can. Yeah, so if I say pyramid, now I can change the number of sides. I might have a 10-sided pyramid. There you go. So you can change that, that's no worries. You used to be able to draw a dish. Don't know if you still can. No. Dome. No. So in older versions of CAD you could draw those commands, but they weren't really that useful anyway. Oh, and I suppose sphere isn't mentioned here, but you can draw a sphere as well. Okay, well that's it for these basic commands. The next tutorial document talks about combining 3D solids, so I hope you'll tune in for that one, and best of luck.